Hey, and welcome to DFA Wargaming. Today, we're going to do a little bit of arts and crafts. So you might have noticed some of our miniatures here, they articulate, right? We can move their arms, we can torso twist them, pretty cool. So I'm going to show you today the process, the tools, the techniques that we use to make this happen. And we're going to go over that in just a bit. The mech that we're going to work on today is an Annihilator 2A. This is hot off the press at Iron Wind Metals. It's a very heavy mech, both in the game and physically. And so we're probably just going to put a heavy-duty magnet right in at the waist so it can torso twist. I don't think we're going to worry about magnetizing the arms, but we'll take a look and see how it goes. And that's coming up right now. Alright, so now we're going to go over the tools that we'll be using in this tutorial. The first one, X-Acto knife. Excellent for getting the model off the sprues, cleaning up the model, cutting off the little divots where the torso fits into the legs. You'll see all this coming up shortly, but this is the #1 tool here. Secondly, good pair of metal snips. These are essential for every gamer. Files, equally excellent for cleaning up the model, making sure it's looking its best. You know, a lot of the ironwood metals, they've got flashing and whatnot on the base. The mech doesn't quite sit right. These are phenomenal for that. And also cleaning up the torso sections to make sure they can lay flat and as close as they can. Next up here, we've got our magnets. All right, so these are N52 neodymium magnets. These guys have a lot of pull to them. We have 3 different sizes here. We have a 1/8 inch by 1/16 inch. These are excellent for plastic miniatures all over the place, arms, legs, torsos, whatever you want. And then for the metal miniatures, especially the bigger ones like the heavies and the assaults, I use these 1/4 inch by 1/16 inch magnets. I also keep a thinner 1/4 by 1/32 inch magnet on hand, just in case there are some clearance issues with the thicker magnets, or if I want to try to do anything fancy there. But usually I'm going to be using these most of the time, and on the bigger mechs, you'll see today in this tutorial I'll most definitely be using one of these 1/4 inchers. So in order to get these magnets seated on the mechs, alright, what I'm going to use is drill bits. So I have 2 drills here. The first one here is your standard pin vise. Now this is a smaller, right, you can see it's a very tiny drill bit, way too small for, you know, for the magnets themselves, but what I use this for is a pilot. So I drill a little tiny hole, I line it up, I make sure it looks straight. This is excellent for that because what you'll see is the bigger drill bits will kind of fit into that pilot hole, and that helps you line it up. Even after you've been drilling the hole for a while, this smaller pin vise is excellent for continuing to sort of drill pilot holes, make sure that it gets nice and straight in there. At least that's how I like to do it. So this bigger hand drill is the other one, and this is a big deal, right? Because this one here can hold full-size drill bits, which is excellent. When you're talking about a 1/4 inch magnet, you need a pretty hefty drill bit, and so you're going to need this thing. And it's a nice handle, you get a lot of torque on it, so this is real good. All right, we got 2 drill bits here. Again, it does not really matter what size magnet you pick, as long as it fits the mech. But what matters is that the drill bits and the magnets are the same size. So we had a 1/4 inch magnet, I got a 1/4 inch drill bit. We've got an 1/8 inch magnet, got an 1/8 inch drill bit. And these are just standard drill bits you pick up at the hardware store. It doesn't need to be anything special. Now I did tape the bigger one because I just use this as a depth guide. I mean, there's a bunch of different things you could use, guides and whatnot. I just put tape on it, it's just a little easier. So that is that's what I do there. Now you can use a Dremel if you so desire. I would advise against it only because you need to make sure the model is clamped down and perfectly straight, and you need to make sure that Dremel's coming down straight, and you need to make sure that model's not going to spin out when you put the Dremel to it, because those Dremels do move, even at the slowest speeds, they're moving very fast. So I find that this is, it's slower, of course, but it is more precise, and so that's why I prefer these hand drills in this scenario. So a couple other secret weapons here. The first one is Funtac. So this is not green stuff. This is like the stuff you would hang a poster on a wall with, right? It stays perpetually gummy. until you put a little bit of glue on it, and then it gets pretty hard. So what I like to do is I like to take a very, very tiny bit of it, I mean almost like the size of a pencil head, something like that. I'll put that in the hole where we want to seat the magnet, put a little glue in there, seat the magnet down on top, and this helps to kind of create a broad contact surface, and again, really helps to hold the magnet in place while that glue really hardens and dries over time. I also have a pencil here. Why do I have a pencil? Well, it's because the magnets don't stick to it. So when I am seating the magnet on the mech and I want to kind of make sure the one side's level with the other side, I need to push this side down. You don't want to be using your fingertip. Everybody knows how terrible it is to get something stuck to your finger. Last thing you want is a magnet stuck to your finger. So the pencil's great for that precision work without worrying about getting glue everywhere. So I like to use this for any time I'm working with magnets and I need to, or anything small and you just want to get it seated in perfectly. And speaking of glue, I use this. This is standard. You can use whatever you want. This is cyanoacrylate, works on the metal, works on plastic, works on just about everything. It is gap filling, so it will get in those cracks and make sure that the magnet's seated, make sure that your arms are nice and seated. So this is a pretty good glue here. And then a couple of examples on the magnets here. So the first mech that we have is Zeus, and so this model here is plastic, and so we've used exclusively the 1/8 inch magnets on this guy, and you can see it's got pretty good range of motion. It's obviously not coming apart, so pretty good there. All right. The second example here is a Highlander. So this is an Ironwind Metals model. If any of you have this model, it's pretty heavy, and so what we've got here is the 1/4 inch magnets on both sides, 1/4 inch by 1/16, and you can see that is not going anywhere. It holds very well, and so this is why we use these magnets, right? But yet you still have nice torso twist, nice range of motion. You can twist it pretty easy, but it will hold the model, so you don't have to worry about your beautifully painted models falling apart. So these models, again, magnets, N52 neodymium, that's what you want. It's the good stuff that keeps your models together. So now we'll show you how we do it.
Alright, so we start out by cleaning up the flashing, all the other imperfections that come out of the casting process. This is pretty standard. Even on plastic minis, you're going to need to clean them up. The X-Acto knife, again, great for that. And then the file's good for really just smoothing out the surface. So you can see now the mech's standing pretty straight. Make sure you get all the pieces, arms, legs, torsos. The cleaner the piece is, the better the paint job will come out. You can also use the X-Acto knife to kind of carve in some of the details that may have gotten sort of flashed over, if you will. And so that's kind of what I'm doing here, is cutting some of the lines into the arms there. Now just cleaning up the upper torso. I want to make sure that this is nice and flat. When we magnetize these two pieces, we're going to want to make sure that they sit real nice and flush. Right out of the factory, right, it has a nub on it, and that's for gluing, but we're going to cut that nub right off. You don't want to use the tip of the X-Acto knife because that will break. You want to use the back part of the knife. It gives you a little bit more leverage. And you can do a couple iterative passes on there and use the file to kind of smooth it out. It's a little bit of time-consuming process, but again, you do want to make sure the pieces that you're magnetizing, really do have a nice flush fit to start. It's going to pay dividends down the road. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. Those two pieces line up pretty nice. And so now we're going to start the actual drilling process. The legs there, the lower torso, already had a hole in there, and so what we're going to do is use the 1/8 inch drill bit to continue drilling out that hole. We're going to put in a 1/8 inch magnet. We're not going to put a big guy in the bottom half. So we're just going to make this hole a little bit bigger, make sure that that magnet fits in there, gets in depth-wise, looks real good. Alright, perfect. Now we haven't glued anything yet, but we are going to start drilling out the top half. I'm going to use the small pin vise to create a starter hole here, and we're going to use the sort of the smooth part where we cut the nub off to center this hole. You can see we got a nice centered hole there. We're going to go up to the 1/8 inch drill bit here, make that pilot hole a little bit bigger. We're not going to go right to the 1/4 inch drill bit yet, even though I am going to use a 1/4 inch magnet on this. We're going to make that starter hole just a little bit bigger. Alright, there we are. That's our finished pilot hole. Now we've moved up to the bigger drill bit, and we're going to start fleshing this out here. And it's going to take you some time. Be patient. Again, as I had mentioned earlier, if you want to use a Dremel, it will make it go quicker, but I really recommend the hand drills. The Dremels are, again, you know, lots of power there, lots of torque. You can really, you can really drill a hole and screw up the Mini pretty good if you're not perfect with the clamping. The hand drill much more precise in terms of getting a nice straight hole. And again, I've taped it, so I have a pretty good idea of how deep I need to get. Here's an example of what it starts to look like. You will want to clean that up with the X-Acto knife. I mean, as you're drilling your hole, you know, you want to make sure that it lines up with the feet. Make sure that everything looks good, because you can always adjust and pivot, and if, you know, your hole is off center, you can always fill it with some of that fun tack, some of that putty, or if it's real bad, you could even use some green stuff, let it set, and you know, use that as sort of a brace for the magnet if your hole's really out of whack. Cool. Okay, and we're going to test fit here, and this is the 1/16 inch magnet. You can see it's not quite in there, so we're going to keep going. And this is just an iterative process. You know, as you get better at this, you'll get an eye for how deep you need to go. And remember that the drill bits, right, they're not square drill bits, right, they're round, so you're going to need to drill a little bit deeper, and that's again why I use that fun tack to kind of serve as a contact surface to fill in that concave part. The metal is very soft, so it is easy to get in there, and you can see you get a nice smooth hole, and we can see now that magnet fits in there just perfectly. Looks real good. You know, you can leave it so that the magnet's hanging out, you know, a little bit. In some of the bigger mechs, they have overhanging torsos. You might not notice. In the Annihilator, because it is sort of sloped upward from the waist, you're going to want to make sure it's flush. Now, what I'm doing now is making sure that the magnets are polarized the right way, right? So you never want to be in a scenario where you glue the magnets the wrong way. So I marked them with a marker, just a dry erase marker there, so I know that the sides that I've colored in, right, the black sides there, are the ones that are going to be going into the model. And here's where I'm using the fun tack. I'm going to work it in, get a little gummy, and I'm just going to take a real tiny piece here, extremely small. I'm going to prep that on the tip of my knife, put a little bit of glue in there. You don't want too much, again, it's going to spill everywhere. Just a little bit will do. Get the fun tack in there, work it around, make sure it's coated in glue, clean off the knife. Alright, got our secret weapon number 1 here. I put the magnet right on the X-Acto knife with the marked part facing out, so that when I put it in, the marked part is facing down, right? And it just slides right in, and we use the pencil there to level it out in case any glue kind of creeps out of the sides. We want to make sure that it's in there nice and flat, nice and centered. And you can see that, I mean, that magnet just seats right in there perfectly. Dead center, real good. Put the other one on top, remark it, just make sure. Measure twice, cut once. It's my dad always used to tell me. Alright, now we're getting ready to glue the larger magnet into the top. Use a little bit more fun tack here. I am going to test fit it to make sure that that fun tack is in there. Make sure that it stays flush. If you put too much of the tack, or even if you're using green stuff too much in there, what will happen is it'll force the magnet out of the hole. It'll be a little crooked, it won't look right, you know, so you don't want that to happen. So it's not glued right now, it's just the fun tack holding it in. I'm test fitting it, making sure that there's good range of motion, making sure it doesn't turn and get cockeyed. So it looks pretty good. Same method, put a little bit of glue in first, make sure you coat the edges. We're going to drop the fun tack in. little bit more glue on top. Again, this is a bit of a bigger piece there, so we want to make sure we get it coated around. Real nice. All right, we got it patted down in there. Now we're going to put the magnet in again, making sure that the marked side goes down. Perfect.
All right, and here we are with the finished product. We have our legs here. We have the 1/8 inch magnet in there by 1/16 inch, right? And then on the torso, we have a much larger 1/4 inch by 1/16 inch. And so they're glued, they're dried, we're ready to test, and voila, fits together real nice. And so you can see here, we've got a real nice fit, and holds pretty well, if I do say so myself. Pretty cool. So now, when I'm playing BattleTech, if I want to know which way my Annihilator's looking, I can do that very easily. Also makes it great for storage, right? You don't have to worry about these bigger, heavier models breaking. You can take them apart, you can put them in your little foam trays there or whatever, so also useful in that regard too. So there it is, magnetization at its finest. I hope you found this tutorial useful. I certainly enjoyed doing it, and I'm sure we'll do more again soon. Thanks again from all of us here at DFA Wargaming.